Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to Raising Excellence, one of the most valuable hours of your day. I'm Michael, the MCCC for today's adventure, and today's show is Connecting Your Desires to Action. Continuing on step two in our own Tim Flynn's Foundations of Self-Discovery. Beware, oh, sorry, follow that up. We've got our two co-hosts with us today. Agnieszka, our psychosomatic illuminator,
Hello, nice to be here today.
and Willow, our trauma consultant.
Really happy to be here and happy to have everyone who's viewing.
And if you are viewing live, please feel free to ask a question or load up a comment. We will try and answer those questions or comments throughout the show. Now, we've been talking about values and doing a time study and how our values and time integrate into our daily practices. We were expecting to have a couple more guests with us today, but for other reasons beyond our control, we're the same people that was here yesterday. So, with that said, does anybody have any additional experiences from the time study or follow up on what the time study has done for you?
The biggest thing that the time study has brought to my attention is understanding that if my time is spent on things that are not aligned with my values, I may be taking myself down a path I do not want to go without paying attention to the outcome. Just sort of meandering through the woods right into a swamp.
How about you, Willow? Anything?
I was gonna say the biggest outcome or revelation is I personally have a hard time um, realizing what my real values are. Um, like today, I was extremely tired and I probably should have figured out how to rest. I actually ended up overscheduling my day and just kind of went with it because I'm like, I know I can do it. And I have a feeling that's going to wipe me out for a couple days. So I'm going to have to learn how to remember what my real values are and get back into my routine because I was slacking on that. I talked to a bunch of people today about like, oh yeah, I'm not doing my routine. I haven't for the last couple of days. We had a bunch of things going on. But yeah, that was it.
Yeah, I would say one of the things that I think Dennis mentioned this somewhere along the way, this idea of reduction versus like addition when it comes to scheduling your day, reducing the things that, reducing your day to the things that are the most important versus trying to do more things or try and compact your time into doing three things at the same time or anything like that. I think is a much more valuable way of trying to live and live in a way that really does make you the happiest person that you can be. But I don't know. Have you guys heard of the Eisenhower method? I think is what it's called. And it's like breaking the category into urgent versus important. And so the things that are urgent and important are the things you should do first. And the things that are urgent and unimportant are the things you should delegate.
So,
And
what are
then
the
the
four categories then? Urgent, important.
urgent and important are supposedly the priorities. And
Mm-hmm.
then urgent and not important are things you should delegate. And then not urgent and not important are things you should get rid of. And then important but not urgent is schedule. Schedule for some time in the future. I thought that was a kind of a useful tool to kind of get rid of some of the, to try and get rid of some of the tasks that, if I have a to-do list and it's 20 things long, start prioritizing by that kind of a category system. Yeah, it makes it a lot easier to say, nah, get rid of that, send that to somebody else.
I think people take for granted how much organization they do on their phone, and they just trust their phone to do it. Uh, that would be great if I remembered that I had all that on my phone and I could use it. That's my problem is I end up not using um, the tools that I have, or I'll slack off, and then I realize that nothing's written in there, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I have to restart the process, and kind of gives me an excuse mentally to not do it.
Yeah, it's funny
Yeah.
because
Okay. Go
I
ahead.
when I started Autonomy, I started using the calendar and using the Calendly to book appointments so that other students can book appointments with me. And then because of that, I ended up having using Google Calendar and putting everything in there. Because if I didn't want people to make an appointment with me, I would have to make my own appointment with myself, right, to block that time. Sorry, and I because of that, I kind of just got into a habit of it, and now I check it every day, and it's like it's second nature to me now. And now I'm asking my mother to use the tool, but she won't.
Yeah, I have a resistance to Google schedule myself, but it is so dang useful that it's hard to find anything else that looks similar or works similar. I'm still kind of a like pen and paper kind of guy for the most part, but it is very difficult. Like with what we've been kind of taught with autonomy, it's kind of hard not to use the system that's in front of you. It makes it so much easier for everybody else to schedule time.
Well, and Calendly only connects with certain calendars, not all of them. So you kind of stuck, right?
Yep, yes.
I noticed this pattern of so I have a calendar book that I write because I'm a write it down kind of person. And I will use it religiously, and then I'll get out of the habit of using it. And I compared this to people who are on medication for something, and they're taking their medication and they feel a lot better and they're just doing really good. And they're like, I don't need the medication. It's all good. I'm fine. And they stop taking their medication. That's kind of how I was like, oh, that's what I'm doing. Because I feel better because I'm doing these exercises. And then uh, I get kind of caught up in enjoying how good I feel that I'm like, I don't need this. I don't have to waste my time. I can just have fun. I'm cured.
It's like journaling too. If I stop
Yeah.
journaling, I don't feel as good, but I feel better, so I don't need it.
So connecting our desires to our actions. Um, have you guys done anything specifically in that regard that like altered the way that you were doing things before? That maybe you incorporated something that has changed in the past week with this time study?
Well, I teach I have been teaching that 7 steps to manifestation thing for many, many years, right? And that has to do with fine-tuning your desires, but also letting go of your attachment to your desires. So you're making sure that you know exactly what you want, and you can imagine it, and you can feel it, you can taste it, and you can touch it. And at the same time, you don't really care if it happens or not. It's a very tricky proposition, right? Because that's when energetically you have the most faith in this happening and the least attachment in making sure that, oh my God, it has to happen or else I'm going to die. You know, that kind of attachment. Then energetically you're attached to not having it because you're continually thinking about not having it. And so that's not the right attachment to having it.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
absolutely. Yeah, as a matter of fact, that's quite a few of my friends have said that they don't really like setting goals. They like, kind of having an idea of where they want to go, but really just being the person that they want to be is really the effort that they want to make. And so it is like a very tricky kind of understanding of like what goal setting is, because I think it is an important thing to kind of visualize what you want in the future and who you are in the future. but at the same time, it is really becoming a daily practice of who you want to become that really gets you there.
And do you think that that has to do with how you spend every single day as well, how you spend the minutes of your day? How is that attached to setting your desires for you?
Well, I think it is, even if it's a minute a day, it is moving forward. And that's really kind of the momentum that you've got to have to really get anything done. So there's got to be some kind of movement every day. And the more that you kind of build that movement, the more likely you are to actually get that done. So incorporating the things into your daily habits and daily practices are really the way to make goals happen. And then, like you said, not really worrying about the outcome, but just being the person that you want to be.
So is that how you made, like, when you said you used to make a lot of money on a weekly basis or whatever? So what were some of the tools that you used in order to like achieve that kind of level of abundance?
Well, I think one of the things I got really heavily involved in journaling and what they call the Franklin Planner, which is like a very hardcore kind of planning regimen where you're like scheduling everything, you're writing everything down. You got your monthly goals, your weekly goals, your daily goals, your annual goals, all this recorded, all kind of collated and put together, and then a real rigid format of like constantly hitting that. And I was able to do that for a few years, but it is draining. It is that it's not really that like that paring down. It's actually adding in. And although people can do it, people can become more efficient at doing a lot of things. It is a very hectic life, and that's one of the reasons that I kind of do feel strongly about this idea of not really having too many goals. And being a project manager, that was one of the things that you always have this project, and of course there's always a deadline and a finish line for each project. But that does kind of stress you out. And so I was successful, but I really kind of got burnt out rather quickly going in that direction. And so
Um,
eventually, and thank God, I quit.
By the way, a big shout out to our listener, Tyler. Thank you very much for listening and paying attention. We expect a full written report at the end of the show.
I was gonna uh, comment on what you said, Mike. It reminded me, and of course, my mind just went completely blank. What was the last thing you said, Mike? That'll help remind me.
Well, I was just talking about how I was very productive, but it is stressful, and over time it just like runs you out of gas eventually.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that actually did help jog my memory. I think it comes down to setting realistic goals. Like for me, when I first started journaling, I wanted to do it every day at the same time, like the first thing in the morning. And I don't have a set schedule enough, like a rigid schedule and or enough of a rigid schedule to accommodate that. Um, so I had to start accommodating by doing it at different times of the day, but at least every day. And then I was doing it like every other day because if I was super busy that day, I would try to spend a few minutes. But if I didn't get to it, I could do it the next day. I think that was, I think I need to go back a step and be like, okay, I need to do it every day. So that's a realistic goal. I can spend a few minutes every day. That doesn't seem so bad, even if I'm spending 2 minutes writing in my journal because I said that I was going to do every day. I don't know what to write. Uh, that's realistic, and a lot of people get caught up, especially around New Year's and the changing of New Year's. They get caught up in trying to set these big goals for the end of the year, and they don't focus on the things that you can do every single day that get
Mhm.
you to that goal.
Well, every
Yeah.
big goal has to be broken down into like quarters and then monthly, you right? Because otherwise, how do you know if you're actually attaining it or getting closer?
Well, that's certainly like a project, like what they call milestones. Uh, that's an easy way to really kind of record where your progress is and where your assumptions lie in regard to what kind of progress you think you should have. But I was going to say, in regard to like, just scheduling even a minute a day to do something that is important to you is really important. So like if all you can do, and this is kind of the thing that I do is like I'll schedule like 20 minutes or 25 minutes, and if I don't do it, I'll just schedule like 15 minutes, and if I don't do it, then I'll schedule 10 minutes, and then if I don't do it, I'll schedule 5 minutes, and until I get to the point that okay, I'm just going to do it for a minute, or whatever, that just to get that thing rolling. If it's a minute and that's all you can do it, because it will, the idea is to really kind of get yourself in the habit of just on a daily basis, kind of hooking yourself up with the things that are important to you.
I did something similar with the movement segment of my trauma course that I'm working on because I noticed specifically for me and a bunch of other people that I know, going through even a 10-minute or 15-minute session can be difficult. It's just it triggers the body to go back to a place that it's not helpful. So I incorporated, I was like 5 to 10 minutes, does not have to be consecutive, outside in the sunlight, barefoot in the grass. uh you can do a stretch, do it on, do one stretch that you like and do it on both sides of your body. That takes 5 minutes. If that's all you do, if that's all you can do, at least you got those muscles used to stretching that much every single day. And eventually you're going to get to a point, if you like it enough, that you're going to want to do other stretches and you're going to want to add things. And then some days you're going to want to just go back to that 5 minutes and you know that you can. So um, I think that's really helpful for people is they get to pick how much of a bite they take off.
Have you
Yeah.
guys heard of that guy who exercises every time he goes to the bathroom? So basically, every time he
Mhm.
goes pee, he does like 4 or 5 push-ups or against the wall or whatever, something, 4 or 5 something, right? And so the trigger is when he, well, I think for him was get up off the couch. So every time he gets up to get a drink or go pee or open the door, whatever, he has to do this like short burst of exercise for a few seconds. And apparently it works really, really well because he's doing little bits of exercise all throughout the day.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what they call micro habits. And essentially what
Mm-hmm.
you're doing is kind of attaching habits to things that you have to do every day, and essentially leveraging that into building up a habitual practice of doing things that are helpful. It is unfortunate that so many people really beat themselves up about who they are or what their condition is, and every time they are confronted with like, okay, I can do a little bit something about that, they they go and go to that mental state in which they feel bad about themselves. And
Yeah,
so that's
instead of
where, go ahead.
I was to say, instead of feeling proud about their achievement of getting 5 minutes of exercise, they're feeling shame because they didn't do 10 minutes or 15 minutes when that's the average minimum time you should be exercising.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's where the micro habits really come into play, is that if you really just say, I'm going to do 5 push-ups every time I go to the bathroom, it's not really that difficult to do 5 push-ups, you know, and make that a habit. And when you do it, you actually feel better. And so it is an easy way to really kind of trick yourself into doing the things that are better for you. And then that's another thing is kind of getting to the point that you realize that you can observe who you are and distinguish between harmful behavior and valuable behavior and beneficial behavior.
But that's kind of what our next week's topic is about because we're talking about baggage and how it distorts the way we view things, and also how to replace those chunks of us that we've lost because of negative experiences and put them back where they belong so that we can be stronger and more powerful in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I
I think
think
that's. Oh, go ahead.
sorry. I was gonna say I think that emotions are a really good indicator of when things are out of whack, and when people's, because that's we're gonna be talking about this next week, and I've noticed a lot of people will be like, okay, I'm having problems, but I don't understand where they're coming from, so they're like, yeah, I want to put down my baggage. Can you help me find it?
It's
Uh,
on your back. It's the backpack that you never take off.
but they don't know because they've never taken it off, so they don't realize that the backpack is separate from them, and that's the hardest part, is getting them to realize that, dude, you're wearing a backpack. You can put it down.
And
Uh,
so I have to tell the backpack story now because you brought it up. It's all your fault. So when we go through life, we have this little backpack, and every time we have a negative experience, we stick it in the backpack and we carry it on our back. But every time we have a positive experience, we leave it where it lies. And then every now and then on our journey, as we're walking down the path of life, we're going to stop and sit down under a tree, open the backpack, and look through all that shit stuff that we've put in there over the course of our lifetime, where all the good stuff was left by the path. Because of course, Pantare, everything flows. But we only apply that to positive experiences, not negative experiences. Why?
Yeah, why do we do that? Why do you think we load up the negative experiences versus let go of the good experiences?
Because we want to be just like our parents, who are constantly negative, focused, telling us, not, don't do this, don't do that. You can't possibly do that. What makes you think you could possibly do this? That's not going to happen. Sorry, Sam, I interrupted you. Go.
no, you didn't. I never started, but I was just like ready to jump because I was like, yes,
I
I
heard
have
you.
something to
I
say.
saw you.
I don't actually have an answer to your question. I don't know why it's so important for us to, come to that conclusion. But the Body Keeps a Score actually comments on this. They say that when you have experienced trauma and you're done with it, especially if you had repressed memories or you just kind of like shoved it back in that box where you're like, I wasn't traumatized, I was fine. Um, my brain is all fuzzy. Oh, yeah. The statement was, it is if my body went through a war that I won, but I don't get to claim that victory. So the body doesn't know that it's over. The body keeps reacting as if it hasn't won it because you don't get to claim that you survived, especially if you've been told that you you survived. You survived what? Being a child, like everyone
It was
else.
all your fault anyway.
Exactly.
Whatever happened, it was all your fault.
Yeah. So if you survived, you put yourself in that situation anyways. So really, how good of a it all goes back. But the key part is you don't get to claim the victory, and that carries on into adulthood. That just, I mean, most people, if they were carrying a backpack and they threw all their negative stuff in it, they'd eventually get tired of it enough that they'd have enough self-respect that they'd be like, no, I'm tired of carrying this stupid backpack. uh,
But how can you? Every single person you know is carrying a backpack just like yours. If you're suddenly one without a backpack, you know what you are in this society? Loopy.
because
Woohoo! Everything is
eventually,
good. I have no money and I don't care. Haha,
I
okay.
A
think
Let
hippie.
us lock you up.
I think eventually, though, if you walked around in this hypothetical town that we've created, where people carry on backpacks and pick up ideas,
Woohoo!
you'd see the people who are doing better, that they're probably going to be picking up some of that positive. And then you might even see them pulling some negative stuff out of their backpack and being like, I'm going to cast this away. And usually the masses will be like, why are you emptying your backpack? We all have to carry our backpack. You have to carry it too.
Yeah. And they don't
Well,
all talk to themselves.
the
We
that
all talk to ourselves.
that book, King, Lover,
King
Magician,
warrior,
Warrior,
magician lover.
however that goes. Um, they talk about the difference in the shadow archetype versus the true self. And there is kind of a tie-in with the way that we're conditioned. Like certainly all the movies and stuff like that essentially embody the shadow archetypes, and so like all these things are essentially what the role model is for a lot of people when it comes to our society. And then you add in all the other stuff, the rigid disciplinarian kind of system that effectively says you're going to do it our way or else. And that's why I think a lot of people, when they talk about, you have somewhere between 50,000 and 150,000 micro thoughts a day, 80% of them are negative. It's because there's this constant mantra of negativity that you've gone through your entire life. And then, of course, all the advertising and everything is one in which they're telling you, well, you don't have what you need. You need this. You don't have that. So, you need money. And, oh, you don't have any money. Well, you suck. You
Or vice
know?
versa. They don't show you the darker parts. So you're constantly bombarded with people who are like, I'm so happy. I'm just getting through the day and smiling and having a great time and I just bought a house and got married and had bunches of babies. And so
And look
it
at my $600 purse.
yeah, and it puts you in the habit of being like, "Oh, well, I guess these aren't real problems." Like what's on social media, the news, it doesn't reflect who people are as a species, how we are not only conditioned from our society, but how we are conditioned from our biological programming. Like people who say that our DNA doesn't have an effect on who we are, what we do, why we like the things we do, I just it doesn't make that doesn't that argument doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, I think there's certainly an element to that because I mean, I just had the experience where I was able to read a book about the history of my family. And I was reading some of my great grandfather and all these other, and I could see kind of a similar kind of approach to a lot of different things that I do myself. That kind of says to me that yeah, those things are kind of inherent. But I don't know if those things are actually something that just kind of because we see that every day that becomes like part of our thing, or is that part of our actual?
I'm
I
not
don't know.
sure, but it makes me think about this documentary that I was watching about adopted children who uh it was basically how children learn to move their own bodies, and it's through the imitation process, very similar to imprinting. So they
Mhm.
watch their biological parents move their body, and then they try to replicate that. So, uh, if you're not biologically related to your parents, and your parents have maybe never had children, and they don't know those rhythms, they can't like get in tune with you, it can cause the child distress. Like they feel like a duck who's being raised by a bunch of rabbits, or a dog, they're trying to move like that animal, but that animal doesn't move like them, so they're literally not even learning how to use their bodies correctly. And statistically, children who are adopted or not raised with their biological parents, they tend to have more psychological issues or behavioral issues, apparently, from the school. They're acting out because they're dealing with things that they're not able to express. They just generally have a little bit more of a hard time.
There's certainly something to that. I don't know exactly what that is, but yeah, I definitely believe that that's probably true. That there are some kind of biological connections that are a necessity for kind of melding of the mind and spirit and so forth.
But there's something to be said about nature as well, because I've seen documentaries with twins raised by people who they didn't know, and they still have the same physical habits as their actual biological, the other twin who they've never met or whatever. They have the same way of scratching their head or whatever. So there is something to be said about cellular biology and the encoded memories inside our cells
That
that
was
have to
another
do.
part. That was another part of the documentary. One of the twins was reunited with his biological brothers, and they watched his body language. He Have you ever seen like a group of puppies and they all like tumble together? That's how what it looked like. People are not generally just so free with their bodies like that. They don't just run up and start like wrestling like you would with your siblings. It's a different kind of body language, and it was like they knew each other. And a lot of these twins, they that were separated at birth, they lived like almost identical lives. They would marry the same the men with the same name and the same jobs. They would pick similar jobs, and it was really fascinating to watch. I was like, oh yeah, okay. So there is something to say about a biological connection that I think a lot of people, we're kind of forced out of our own environment. We're trying to live in a zoo, I think.
But hang
Yeah.
on, we were going to be talking about desires and actions. How can you connect your desires and actions? We touched base about that earlier, talking about manifestation and about creating valuable contributions with your time on a daily basis. But what else can we say about the connecting your desires to actions, which is the title of today's episode?
I mean, to tie it back into what we were just saying, I think it's extremely important that we learn what a baseline human, like what our biological needs are, because a lot of our values are going to be probably very closely aligned with those things
So,
until
what's a
they're
baseline
satisfied.
human? Is it like a newborn baby? Because anybody who is older than a newborn baby is already programmed by society, their parents, whatever.
Yeah.
How would you find a baseline human?
I mean, baseline needs, I guess I would assume an infant would what's the word? Like show those attributes.
But what
Um
about friendship and collaboration and all of those? Like,
Infants need social connection. There was, I can't remember, I'm terrible at quoting things, but there was a study done on infants who they were fed, watered, cleaned, but they were not held in any social way. It was a really,
it was
like,
that
it chokes
Romanian
me up.
prison, wasn't it? Or
I don't
Bulgarian? It was
remember.
either
There's
Romanian
actually
or
several of
Bulgarian.
those.
It chokes me
There's
up
several of
thinking
those.
about like these
There was
babies just,
there was one that was done in the United States in I think 1948, and they had 80 children, and half of them died before they stopped the experiment. It was like
yeah.
four months
Wow.
in, 4 months in, and half of the babies had died because they weren't
Was there a
being
reason
used.
why they died? Was it like sudden infant death syndrome, or was it something else like
Well, you can actually
susceptibility?
look this up on the thing. You can see some of the videos of them, like like the nurses are like holding like sticks and stuff like that, and like adjusting things for them and so forth. They're not giving them any physical touch, and you can see the like hollowness in the baby's eyes. It is haunting, to say the
It's,
I
yeah,
least.
don't.
it's
I don't
bad.
think I want to see it.
And the children who do survive, I'm pretty sure they were pronounced like basically feral. Like they couldn't assimilate to, because they don't understand human contact. They can't tell whether you're going to hurt them or leave them. They'd rather you leave them alone in a dark room to die than just like it. It's pretty uh, clear that humans need social contact, even if it's just
Absolutely.
being held to be fed, or the uh basic needs. We need to be touched, we need to be fed, we need to be clothed and sheltered.
Even having my little puppy with me has really made a huge difference in my quality of life. Like cuddling her and sleeping with her, you know what I mean? Like I don't know, like it's done a lot of healing for me, especially after my
it's
tough last 2 years.
it's been said, and I think it's been proven, that children who, if they have been like beaten every time they contact with, like, if their body reacts negatively and they can't find comfort in other people, that horses, one, are one of the best animals. One, because they're big enough that you can't accidentally hurt them. Like, you have to seriously be trying to harm this animal, and not many people are. And it kind of provides a faux mammalian connection that rewires your brain that not everything in the world is out to get you. Like it's that the whole world isn't against you. There is at least an animal who, um, at the
Loves
very
you.
least, won't try to hurt you. I mean, it may not stay there and protect you, but it won't try to hurt you. And that connection is absolutely vital for anyone who is. I mean, it's vital for even people who have not dealt with traumatic experiences.
Yeah.
So if you don't have that a horse, you could get like a big dog. And maybe that'll be enough.
Well, for everybody, no matter who you are, whether you've had traumatic experiences or not, self discovery and self awareness and knowing why we do the things we do and how we react to things we react to, the things that trip us up. It's always good to be more aware of these things, and that way you can s- sort of be more resilient in the world. Is that the right way of saying it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the anything that we can do to learn who we are better, regardless of if it's interacting with another person or just reflecting on ourselves, is definitely valuable time. And certainly taking the time to do that is really an important step in improving yourself situation. And so that's kind of the first thing. And like I said, like we were talking earlier, just even if you're dedicating just 1 minute to it a day, that's a victory if you're doing it, and build from there.
You just reminded me of another. It wasn't really a goal, but it was a way of measuring how I'm using my time instead of a pie chart because I don't ever like to do what people tell me to do. It's kind of a flaw. Uh, I started focusing on what are the things that I do every day. What are the things that I already do every day, and do I want to keep doing those? And that was like the first step uh, towards getting anywhere. To be honest,
That's cool. You don't have to do a pie chart. If you don't like pie charts, don't do them.
Yeah,
I think I suffered from an arrogance issue where I'm like, oh, I always did amazing in school. I never had to study for any test. I'm so smart that I don't have to do this. And then I see how smart you guys sound, and I'm like, oh yeah, I should probably,
It's the
you know,
folly of youth. You'll grow up. Don't worry about it. We're just 20 years older than you.
that is comforting. It is really comforting to be like, oh yeah, I am comparing myself to like people who are
20
way
years
more,
older than you.
yeah, kind of puts it into perspective. I noticed that's a big issue with I'd say kids. I'm almost 30, but kids my age and younger, um, a lot of them will get so down on themselves because they're hanging out with people who are so freaking smart. And everyone told me at Red Pill Expo because I got really self-conscious and I was like, I don't know who you guys are. I'm
But
getting
you're
this book
so
signed,
freaking smart. What are you talking about?
but because I wasn't in like my element. It was my husband's element, and the lady who was helping G. Edward Griffin, she looked me dead in the face and she goes, "Honey, you're smart for wanting to hang out with smart people." And I was like, "Thank you." That made
Nice.
like everything, just all of my self-consciousness just melt away. I was like, "You know what? I am really smart for being around people who want to better themselves."
At 29, I was still suffering from some serious fallacies. I had the arrogance going for me. I wasn't sure. I didn't think I had any significant talent. Every time I created anything like writing or painting or anything, I would self criticize. I would destroy my paintings. I was like, not nice to myself. Not nice at all.
yeah, it is truly amazing how many assumptions you make about yourself that are wrong. And I think there's actually a couple different examples of this. But I think one of them is John Taylor Gatto talking about how he writes things, and he'll write something out. He would, and then he would go back and he would say, is that true? And in many cases, it wasn't quite true. So he'd have to readjust something about the wording to actually get it to actually be true. And that is a lot of, I think what I would call mantras that we have in our own mind, that when we allow those things to just kind of go unchecked, they take us to a lot of different places that are not nice places. And that is why you need to reflect a little. You need to do some journaling, and really take account for what those mantras that we're saying about ourselves are. Because in a lot of cases, you know, it's like embellishment, or it's like exaggeration. There's just so much of that out there, and anything that isn't exaggerated is just kind of dull.
Especially
And
where
so
you
we
live in Central and South America. There's a lot of exaggeration. That's a culture, right?
Well, I would definitely think that just in general, the society is one in which there's a lot of exaggeration. Because like you watch like a report on the stock market, and I was like, oh, the stock market just exploded. It went up like 1%. What?
I think
And,
another good resource. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is it Byron Kate or Byron Katie?
Byron Katie, yeah.
Byron Katie. I watched like two of her TV show counseling sessions, and she does that. Is it true? My favorite one. She was interviewing a guy who couldn't read, and he said he felt stupid, and like he was not good enough. And she was like, well, "Is that true?" And then she looked at his boots, and she was like, "You have some really nice boots there." And his whole face, his posture stood up, and he was like, they are really nice. I made them. And she was like, and you call yourself stupid because you can't read, but you can make your own boots.
yeah, yeah, I think we all have that potential. I think it's really just a matter of like in some cases you got people that are like a fish trying to climb a tree, and they're saying I'm just such a stupid, but it's like, well, you don't need to climb a tree. You're a fish.
Yeah.
Get in the water, and you'll
Yeah,
be happy.
absolutely.
So I guess we'll
And I think our biggest challenge, even as raising excellence, is to help people recognize or identify those parts of themselves that they're denying. Like, oh, I'm not a good writer. Oh, I don't really have am I really, like, even like 2 months ago, I was like, oh, am I really like a good writer? Because this one guy didn't like my writing. I've been a writer for 20 years. I've written all sorts of things. I've written technical manuals and all sorts of things. I've written books and pamphlets. I mean, one guy didn't like it, and I'm already like, I know I'm a writer. There is physical evidence that I'm a writer. People give me money for writing. I mean, that's a lot of physical evidence that I'm a writer. And one guy said one sentence, and I was like, oh, maybe I'm not a good writer. Maybe I should go back to making shoes. No, I've never made shoes before, but let's go back to it anyway. Those will be some crappy shoes.
Let's go from one extreme to the other.
I can never do anything again, ever. He didn't like my writing. That means I'm no good at anything. Anything at all. I cannot possibly cook, paint, or anything ever again. That's it. That's it. The guy gave me 3 stars. That's it. My life is over.
I think I got to that point where it's like I just, you know, gave in to the awful thoughts and I was just letting myself cry over these terrible things that I was saying to myself. And then eventually I'd be like, all right, it's been like 4 hours. Do you have anything left to cry about? No. Oh, look, life still goes on. Okay, I guess we're gonna keep moving. And then it would be like those thoughts would pop in my mind, and then another voice would pop in and be like, I know you're feeling really messed up right now, but you know that's not true. And then you'd be
Yeah,
like, all right,
there's
yeah,
always that
I know,
quiet
but let me
voice.
commiserate here.
Yeah, but that's a temptation you should never go give into. I Last time I gave into, and this is like a super warning that I've placed inside my brain, because 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more, 11 years ago, I was working at IBM, And I was really, really married to my job. I love my job. I was a coordinator of installations, and I loved everybody that worked with me. And I spent 90% of my time at work. And when I after work, I hang out with my work buddies. I was like married to the job in like a really serious way. And I would like get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and walk to work and come home at 10 at night, literally. Anyway, so I was so into it, and then IBM laid me off. They actually canceled their whole department and they moved the whole department to India. And so not only I lost my job, but all of my friends lost their jobs, and they gave us 3 months notice. So for 3 months, all of my friends and I were in down in the dumps. And I said that to myself. I said, "Oh, I'll just let myself be sad for like a week, a week." You know what? I did not get out of that depression for 8 months because I let myself. I was like, well, bad things happen. I'm just going to let myself feel sad for a few days. Oh, a few more. Oh, I'm still sad. You know what? You're still sad because you're letting yourself feel sad. You have to fight this battle. This is the battle. As soon as your brain goes, oh, I'm going to feel sad. I'm just going to let myself feel sad. No, don't let it. Don't let it. Right now, every time that comes up, ever since that experience, I have this big blaring alarm in my head. Don't do it. Don't do it. Go for a walk. Stand up straight. You can't be depressed if you roll your shoulders back. And if you stand up straight and do something that makes you happy. Breathe.
See, I kind of disagree because I don't think it's personally, I don't think it's healthy to just be like, no, don't be sad. But I also agree that you cannot just let yourself, like, you can be sad if you're crying while you're making mac and cheese, then you're crying while you're making mac and cheese. You know what? That thing's not going to burn if you sit on the floor and rock yourself like a baby for about 5 breaths and get back up and stir it. If that's what
Absolutely.
you got to do.
Oh, I
Like, but
let
you,
myself feel sad for months, though. I was like, oh, just a few more days.
and it may last for months, but at least, like, you don't give in, you don't let it be your entire life, because then when you do need a day to rest and you need to feel sad, you're not going to do it because you're afraid that you're going to overdo it. And in reality, like, if you step into it a little bit by bit and you keep going, your body is going to tell you, no, you need a break, you need to go cry for 2 hours this time, and you can schedule it in so you're going to trust your intuition a little bit better, and it makes it not as much of a roller coaster.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. You can't stop yourself from crying altogether. But at the same time, don't give yourself permission to be depressed for an extended period. You be sad, but don't be depressed. How about that? You're muted, but you're smiling sarcastically and nodding.
Oh, that wasn't a sarcastic smile. I just have a bitchy resting face. People say it to me all the time. They're like, I can't tell if you're being sarcastic or like a smart aleck. And I'm like, I'm really not. That's just my face. I'm really sorry. Like, otherwise it's just flat.
Well, I think there is a advice that says something like name it, and that is like half the battle. So like whatever it is you're feeling, name it, describe it, get to know it really well, and and then essentially move on from that.
Don't
Because
identify with it. Don't
yeah,
become one with your depression, sadness,
Yeah.
illness, or however, whatever
There
else.
was there was a meme that I saw that really spoke to me. It said, one day I sat with my anger until my anger finally confided in me that her name wasn't anger, it was sadness. And so it's like, you sit with it. You don't absorb into it. You don't try to take its pain away. You don't try to change it. You just accept it for what it is. It's there for a reason. And the sooner you can figure that out, the more information you're going to have to work with.
yeah.
Yeah, and don't identify with it.
So with that said, one of my favorite phrases, we are at the end of this show, and we have done 3 weeks worth of Tim's
Self
self-development.
discovery.
Well, the first week was self-discovery, where we took a bunch of different tests. The second week was we named our values, and the third week we've done this time study. So next week we're going on to step 3, which is the baggage. And let's talk a little bit about what we're going to do next week in regard to why is this helpful for our preparation for self development.
Yeah, we already touched base on this a little bit earlier in the show today, but it's about restoring the broken or damaged parts of yourself, and thereby letting go of some parts of your baggage and allowing yourself to breathe easier and have less in your backpack, because really that backpack could use some lightening. And also next week we're changing the time of our show. We're going to be doing 3 times a week at 7 p.m. Eastern. So that's Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern. And yeah, we just find that consistency will probably be better.
And then you've got some more face reading stuff coming up, right?
There's one more. Yeah, there are a few more face reading events, shows. I don't know, face readings scheduled, one per Saturday for the next few weeks. So I forget who is this week. I think it was Timothy, but yeah. So we're going to be doing that this Saturday, and that's going to be live at some point throughout Saturday, and then you can watch a replay whenever you want.
Very good. All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for taking the time. We appreciate your attention. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.